Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today I will be doing a roundup review of some cool toned eyeshadow palettes I tried in recent months. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. In case you're unfamiliar with my channel, I like to do this every once in a while whenever I feel I have tried plenty of cool toned eyeshadow palettes, because we all know I love a cool tone palette. So I like to sometimes take one for the team and try it out and see how I feel. But yeah, it's that time of year again where I've tried, I think 12, maybe 13 new to me eyeshadow palettes in recent months. These have already been reviewed with swatches and looks and all that stuff. So I'll make sure to link any videos where you can find that information in the description box down below. But today I'm just going to be doing my roundup thoughts. Like if you were looking for a good cool toned eyeshadow palette this time round, which ones are the best ones? Are they actually cool toned? Because that's always an issue with cool toned eyeshadow palettes. So let's just discuss. And I've got big things here, I've got small things here, I have affordable things, I have more expensive things. It's a whole range of things. And I have 5 really small palettes. So let's talk about something that surprised me a lot, but actually it wasn't a huge surprise because I already knew I love the 5 pans from MUA, but I hadn't tried any of their bigger palettes in a while. A couple of years ago, I had a couple of their 15 pan palettes. I had an Urban Decay Naked 3 dupe, and I also tried the Fire Vixen, which I found out when I was looking this up online is still available, but that's really warm toned and very spicy. So when I found out they also did the Illusionist palette, I knew I had to try it. It looks warmer toned in some cases in the pan than it did on my eyes. So this is definitely a 15 pan cool tone color story with lots of interesting shimmer options that have different textures to them. Some of them are more metallic-y, others are a little bit more flaky, but for how expensive it is, I am so impressed with this. And the same thing already went with their 5 pans that I tried last year, and I tried some more this year. I picked this up when I was in the UK, but I can find it online, especially from EU retailers, so make sure to have some links in the description box down below as well where you can shop these items if they're still available. Those will be affiliate links though, so I could make a small commission if you choose to shop through them. But yeah, I can find this, for instance, on Notino, and I think it's less than €5. Like, it's really cheap makeup, but the quality of this is pretty spot on. I featured this in my top 10 favorite drugstore eyeshadow palettes that I did over the summertime, because I just think this is a really good, very slept on brand where I just feel not enough people are talking about it, because, you know, we get a lot of content with like Maybelline and L'Oreal, but those are the things I cannot really get my hands on. Even though the brands are sold here, we're very behind on releases. So by the time I can try a new Maybelline or L'Oreal product, people in the US have already moved on. So it never works. But yeah, MUA is so much better for me. I really enjoy this palette. It's a stunning one, and I think it's actually one of the best things that I tried in like all the things I have to talk about for you today. So I don't know where I was at because I was talking about this eyeshadow palette from M Cosmetics when my microphone cut out. But I was just talking about how this was a little bit of a disappointment for me, because in all the promotion pictures, the Saturn's Return Divine Skies eyeshadow palette was very much marketed as a cool tone palette. I mean, even the packaging is this silvery thing. I've got 2 eyeballs, so whenever I saw pictures of this, I was really skeptical, because how can you call this a cool tone palette? It's beyond me, but I decided to try it because, hey, I'll take one for the team and see if this is actually cool toned or not. It's not. It's more of a neutral palette. It's not super warm toned, definitely not super warm, but this purple has a brown undertone. That's not a cool tone purple. So it is beautiful if I just judge it by the quality it has. I really enjoy the other Divine Skies eyeshadow palette I have from the same brand. I think they're really good formula. It's very neutral, it's really soft and blendable and easy to use. The shimmers aren't overly metallic or heavy on the lids, so especially if you're someone who struggles with fallout, this is really pretty. But this is not cool tone. This is just not a cool tone palette for me. and that's why I was a little bit disappointed with it. Quality-wise, no issues here, but I wish it had been marketed a slightly different way. And M Cosmetics is a bit of a pricey brand for me to buy because I'm in the EU, and the only way to get this is to get it directly from their website in the US, which just makes this a very expensive purchase. So I was a bit let down because of that as well. But it is still beautiful eyeshadow for sure. So if you like the look of the color story, don't go by the marketing claims because this is not cool toned. But if you like the look of what these shades actually have to offer, you might enjoy it. And then we have a K-Beauty eyeshadow palettes. We all know I love trying some Asian beauty from time to time. I'm actually in the midst of trying out a load of things that I found mainly from C-Beauty brands. And I'm just like dipping my toes into C-Beauty for the first time really. But I tried the Romance Better Than palette in Cheeky Garden. And we all know these little romance palettes are some of my favorites on the K-Beauty market. They are lovely. They are matte heavy, but the reason why I wanted to try this is because it has those pinks and purples, some neutrally browns, and then two really pretty shimmers with a black. This was beautiful. It was a stunning palette, but compared to the other romance palettes I already owned, I didn't really feel it added much to what I already had going. And the main reason for it is the fact that there are too few shimmers for my liking. That was my main issue with this palette. It's not as cool toned perhaps as well. Like there's definitely a little bit of a hint of warmth. So if you're super duper cool toned, this may not be cool toned enough for you. This was cool toned enough for me though. So for me, I had no issues with using it, save for the lack of shimmer. If you love mattes, if you love soft blendable formulas, definitely give K-Beauty a chance because they do lovely things and they are starting to do more and more cool tones as we speak. So they're definitely a space to watch. A palette that is called Hip Gray, also by K-Beauty. This is by Peri Para. Of course, I have to go out and try it. On the website, I could already see that this wasn't gray. It's more taupe brown. And it was promoted again as being cool toned. And then I used it and I was like, this isn't exactly a cool tone palette. This is one of the color stories though where I feel like if you have warm undertones in your skin and you want to try a cool tone, then try something like this. Because I think for a lot of people who have warm toned skin, which is the majority of people, so that's why there is so much warm toned makeup out there. 75% of people have warm undertones. So that's why the makeup brands put out so many warm tone things. If that's you, then sometimes cool tones can look really washed out and chalky on your skin. Whereas with this, I think it's going to work for a lot of people, especially if you have fair skin and you want to try a K-Beauty brand. It is light. It is very, very light. There is a really pretty shimmer in here. I have to give them that. So it has beautiful shades. But I was hoping, because I tried another Peri Para palette before, also in this weirdly long and thick format, and I liked the quality of it, but because of the weird packaging and the fact that there weren't enough shimmers made me feel a little bit disappointed with that one. So I was hoping that if this color story could just wow me, that I would love this one so much more, and it just didn't quite. I just think that this doesn't live up to my expectations personally. But it is a objectively good eyeshadow palette for sure. It's just not giving me exactly what I want. Speaking of palettes that don't give me exactly what I want, is this one. I did not try this brand before. This is from Martina Cosmetics, and this is the Mini Tuchoin. I hope that that's how you pronounce it. And they are a Belgium-based indie brand. And they have been doing some lovely palettes in the past, but I could never get my hands on them. So when I saw on Beauty Bay that they were doing this really lovely 6-pan with these grays and like a purple, it was giving me like Catrice Diamond Lavender look kind of vibes, but then it goes into a black, so it is a little bit deeper than that. I just thought that this could be really lovely. And it just, quality-wise, I felt left down. Color story wise, this is perfectly cool toned. No issues there. It's very cool toned, really pretty. But these two shimmers barely picked up. They didn't really look shimmery on the lids at all. The mattes were a little bit chalky and just didn't blend very well. So I'm just not really impressed by the quality of this, really. The black was the highlight of the show. Like, that was the one shade that really did look very pigmented. And the rest of it, I just had formula issues with it. So for me, this wasn't a really good palette, especially for the price point. I think this was like 25 euros or something like that. So I've definitely tried better things already in the past, but it is a good cool tone color story. Then the next palette was actually sent to me by a subscriber. This was a palette from Moira that I had been eyeing up for a while. And I was out of stock when I placed an order for some Moira products in the past. And I hadn't really tried any of their palettes before. And Moira is an incredibly affordable brand, but they do some really lovely things. I feel more so in their singles rather than their palettes. So that's why, because none of their color stories really stood out to me, I had always passed up on the palettes. But yeah, this was sent to me to give it a try, and I'm glad I got to try it. But again, for the way this is marketed and the way it looks in a lot of pictures online, it looks a lot more cool toned in images I've seen online than what it really does in real life. Essentially, this is 50-50. It's 50% cool tones and 50% warmer tone neutrals. So you can see that this entire top row and then these three shades are your warmer tones. And then here we get the cool tones and then also the entire bottom row. Really pretty, but here's my issue. A lot of the shimmers in the cool tone side of the palette are very dark because these are two shimmers, and then this is the only lighter shimmer you get, which is still a mid-tone. There isn't a single like lighter cool tone shimmer in here, which for me just didn't complete the palette the way I'd want it to. And also another issue I had here is like, this is the only thing I can use as a crease shade, which is too light. This is too dark. So I'm just not really getting the shades that I would want to create an entire look. Was the formula nice? Yes. Does this have good cool tones in? Also yes. It just didn't play together. I wanted it to, and it's just not cool toned enough for it to be a truly cool tone palette. However, if you like having a mix of more warm tones and cool tones, you want it to be affordable, then this can be lovely. I just don't love how bulky this packaging is either. Like, this could have been half the size. Then we have the next palette. This is the Unearthly Dreamer palette, and this is the palette I picked to try out the newer Unearthly quality, because a lot of people have been telling me that it was lovely quality. I myself have a couple of Unearthly palettes already, but I started buying from the brand back when they were still Alien Cosmetics, so I hadn't really tried any of their newer things. And the color stories they do, they have my heart. They really, really do. That new Gargoyle palette, you know it has my name written all over it, but since I tried this over the summertime, I'm like, I don't know why I want to put my money towards it, because Unearthly not only reformulated their palettes, they've also upped their price point a lot when they started reformulating. So I started buying from the brand when they did 9 pans for like 30-35 euros, which was expensive for me to buy because I had to import them from the US, but Unearthly is available through MONOLITH now, making it so much easier to get, but they are now like easily twice the price, like 2 times the price of what things used to go for. And a lot of people are then saying, yeah, but the formula is so much better. And then I tried this, and I would like to gently disagree with you. I just prefer the quality of Unearthly from some of the earlier palettes I have. My Fall Magic, the original one, the Lure palette I have, like so many of the other palettes I have are just better than this. I did not love this formula. I definitely didn't like the shimmers. The mattes are beautiful. If you love mattes, you're gonna love this. If you love working with mattes, you're gonna love it. But here's the thing. Any brand on the market can do a good matte nowadays. There are so many good mattes, but it's the shimmers where I always struggle. And the reason why I say that is because I want a shimmer to be able to be picked up with a brush. I don't mind intensifying it with fingers. I don't mind having to use fingers to make my shadow look good. But with this, I have to apply it with fingers to even transfer it to the lid. And sure, I can wet my brush, I can do, but that's the sign of a not so good eyeshadow formula. A good shimmer formula can be picked up with a brush and can be blended out. If I cannot blend things out, if things need to be packed on for them to show up, to me, that's not good eyeshadow. And that's what I have to do with these shimmers. This looks warmer toned in the palette than it does on the eyes, because I think it's especially this shade that kind of throws you off. But also these shades are like a little bit more of a cooler tone. This pink, for instance, does have a bit of a shift, which is really nice. But essentially you get like half like truly neutral cool tone shades, and then things that are a little bit more like pinky, plummy, neutral, you could say. Beautiful color story. Not gonna knock it down for that, but the shimmers are all but unworkable to me. And for how expensive this is, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. So that's why I haven't picked up the Gargoyle palette myself, because I'm like, I know the mattes in that are probably going to be stunning. Yeah, and in a finger swatch, it looks amazing, because if you swatch it with fingers, it's gonna be amazing, because that's exactly how you need to apply them. But I wanna be able to use brushes and have playtime with things. I don't have copious amounts of lid space. That definitely plays into it. It has to do with my anatomy and how I like to do my makeup more so than anything else. But for me, I just want things to be blendable, and it just isn't. So for me, that was disappointing from a formula point of view, but not so much the color story. The color story is amazing. But let's move on to a palette combo that actually did work quite well for me, and I was very surprised with that, because me and the Beauty Bay formula, we have history, and it's not too positive. But when this released, I asked in a video whether you wanted to see me review it, and some people were saying like yes. So I decided to take one for the team and buy both of the smoky palettes, the 16 and the 42 pan, and to test them out. So I am gonna have to be very honest, when I did my review, I didn't use all the shades in the 42 pan one, because there is quite a bit of overlap. So I did looks with all of the pans in this palette and 1 or 2 looks with this palette to test it all out. I have to say, you don't need both. You really, really don't need both. But in terms of really good cool tones at an affordable price point, these take the cake. If you just want all the cool tones under the sun, you buy these two. I think I got the set for 35 euros, which is cheap for this many pans of eyeshadow. I'm telling you, you will have all the cool tones you need in a lifetime. And here is where the shocker came in. I have had so many issues with the Beauty Bay formula in the past, and these worked. Granted, there is a bit of a caveat, but I'll come to that in a second. But overall, these were good. These were good. These were blendable. Here is what the large one looks like. The way this is set up, and I like that setup. You get 2 rows of mattes, 2 rows of shimmers, another row of mattes, and then in the bottom row, you get another couple of shimmers. So it goes from light to dark. It has brown undertoned cool tones. It has blue undertoned cool tones. It has purpley undertoned cool tones. It has everything. So if you just want a one-stop shop and you want all the cool tones under the sun with not a hint of warmth, this guy, for sure. However, I can also imagine that 42 pans is a little bit overwhelming, which is why I went with the 16 pan as well. For me, this is a lot more manageable. The only downside to this is that you don't get the purpley things. You do get blue tones in here, you get brown tones, and you get grays, but you don't get the purpley and the greeny tone things that are in the bigger palette, just so you know. And I did have an issue with this because I did a look with this as I was traveling, and I'm still not sure if it was the palette or if it was the fact that I was traveling and I probably like had been in air conditioning for too long and my eyes just started to water, but my eyes started to sting really badly when I used it. However, I used the exact same shade from the other palette and I was fine. I was fine. So I don't think it was the formula of the palette. I was just thinking that it was the fact that I was traveling, that I was in an environment that I wasn't used to, and my eyes just, boom, did this. I do have sensitive eyes, I have allergies, so sometimes if things line up in a way that's not advantageous to me, things sometimes goes wrong. That just happens. But yeah, this is beautiful as well. It doesn't have all the shades that the large one does, as I mentioned, but it just has 16 really, really good cool tones, and every look I did with this was stunning. Blendable mattes, impactful shimmers that can be picked up with a brush and that are blendable. And it's affordable. Like, this is one of the best cool tone things I have tried in the past year, let me tell you. And I did not expect that going into it. Is this a cool tone palette or not? I think it can be debatable because this is quite colorful. However, I don't think that cool tone palettes need to be limited to cool tone neutrals. They can also be cool toned, fun, colorful things. So this is the Fantasy Cosmetica Cradled in Ice. We all know I love myself a bit of Fantasy Cosmetica. I buy their palettes through MONOLITH because it is a bit easier for me being in the EU. And when they announced this, I knew I had to try it. I knew I had to try it. This again, it looks warmer toned in the pan than it did on my lids. Especially these two here off to the side. And I think it's because the palette is so blue heavy in the packaging that these look more peachy than they actually are. They're not as peach, okay? On me, they just pulled like really nice neutral shades. We get a little bit of a pink. There are 3 blues in here, which is why I'm like, is it a cool tone palette? It is, because there are blues, but I know not everybody likes blues. But I don't mind a blue. Amazing shimmers, the amazing shimmer quality that I know Fantasy Cosmetica to have. It's all in here. Some really stunning, yummy, shifty shades, which is another thing I love about Fantasy Cosmetica. This palette was beautiful. I love playing with it. I love that it can be neutral and then you have those amazing shimmers, or you can go in with those pops of blue and just use them as a pop, but you can do a full-on blue look if that's what tickles your fancy. For a 12 pan, it just has quite a lot of options. And where with the Beauty Bay, I feel it's really, really good cool tones, but it doesn't have anything interesting going on. And with this one, I feel you also get the interest. In case you... And also with Fantasy Cosmetica, because I was like having a bit of a rant about the price point of Unearthly, I feel that as far as indie brands go, even these 12 pans from Fantasy Cosmetica, they're still not super expensive compared to some of the other brands that we're getting at the minute. So I feel like Fantasy Cosmetica, as far as indie makeup goes, they're still quite more, like a little bit more on the affordable side. A brand that's definitely not on the affordable side of things is Adept. And this is the Amy Loves collab that came out over the summertime. I love Amy. She's one of my favorite creators on YouTube. So I watch her stuff all the time. And Adept, again, not my favorite formula. I had a couple of their older palettes. Those I liked. Then they changed the formula. I bought the Minka thinking it was going to be a great cool tone palette. And I didn't love the formula. This has more mattes, so it works better for me as a full-on color story. The only issue I had with this is that a lot of these mattes are really, really dark, or it's a blue. What do you want me to do with that? There's just not really a good crease shade for me in here. So it definitely knocked it down a little bit for that reason. And there aren't that many really good shimmers that are not blue. So we get 1, 2, 3, 3 blue leaning shimmers. They're pretty shimmers, they really are. We get a peach, we get a pink, we get another pink. This is like the only true, like, well, it's not even a true cool tone because it's more like a rose gold thing. And then this is a gold, this is a blue, and this is a gray. So I just didn't really feel like things really came together for me and how I like to do my makeup and the way things sit on my skin. So both of these are grays. Where are the taupes? Where are the gray shimmers to go with it? There isn't a single pink toned matte in here, and yet we get 2, maybe 3 even like pinky leaning shimmers. So for me, it feels very disjointed. Like each shade individually, gorgeous. Absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. I love this glittery packaging. Also stunning. But this palette for me had the same issue that I had with the Minka. They are great individual shades, but as a palette, it doesn't work. Is this cool tone enough? Yeah, it's not necessarily warm. It's just not giving the cool tones that I would want to have. And like there are some really interesting shifts, but here's the thing. A lot of the shifts do have a little bit of warmth in them. So it's not a fully cool tone palette from that perspective either. So I was a bit let down with it just not really coming together as a palette and being able to make cohesive looks with it. It just felt a little bit all over the place. And if it had a better crease shade and it had better like shimmers that would go with the mattes, I would have liked this a lot more. Is it stunning quality makeup? Yes. Is it therefore worth the price point? For sure. There are very few brands that do this many shimmers in a palette and that keep the price point slightly reasonable. So if you want really good shimmers, Adapt is a great brand to look into. But I don't know. The direction they've had it in is just not really the way I like to do my makeup. So that's why I was a bit disappointed with this. But like I said, it has really stunning individual shades. So I will still be reaching for this. This can nicely complement the Minka, I think, because there are some purpley pinky tones in the Minka as well. And there are a couple of shimmers in that I feel can complement some of the mattes in this. So it can definitely feel it working together, and having both of these palettes broadens the horizon for sure. But I just wanted a bit more from this. Something that surprised me, again in a good way, is this guy. And I had to run downstairs just a second ago to pick this up because I was like, oh wait, yeah, that's another palette I need to talk about, because this is of course called the Cool Neutrals. But the minute this was released color story wise, a lot of people were critiquing this saying, but that is not a cool tone palette. And in a way, I get why people say this, but this, like the Beauty Bay palette, but the Beauty Bay palette was more of a surprise to me formula wise. This was a surprise to me color story wise. And here is why you should never judge a book by its cover in terms of eyeshadow palettes, because while yes, because of also the silvery background, I think it like makes things worse. This entire first half of the palette looks warm toned, and it looks like the only true cool tones you're getting are right here. But remember what I said when I talked about the Peri Para. I think this is a great cool tone palette for people with warm undertones. And remember, most people on the planet have a warm undertone. So this is going to work for the majority of people as a cool tone palette. Is this going to be a cool tone palette if you have super fair skin and you have cool undertones? No. Is this going to be a cool tone palette if you have medium to deep skin and you have a cool undertone? Yes, because that's where I feel Sigma really shines, is their target demographic seems to be people with medium to deep skin that have like warmer undertones. That's sort of where they aim most of their brand, and most of their makeup seems to be aimed at people with that sort of complexion, which isn't me. But that doesn't mean that this whole thing isn't good. After using this, I felt that the only truly warm things I got were like this section here. So I would not necessarily go into these yellows again if I wanted to do a cool tone look with this palette. But this is cool toned, this pulled cool tone on me, and also these 6 shades were cool toned. And what I love about these Sigma palettes is that each little section is its own little duo, but also the 4 shades next to each other make a really nice quad. So you just have so many options with these Sigma palettes, and they're so well thought through, and they just work incredible. And what I also love with this one particularly is if you take these 2 shades, and these two shades, you have another quad. So it just has so many options. There are shades in here I wouldn't reach for again, and that's been the case with a lot of my Sigma palettes. Actually, I also have that with the Enchanted, where there are like 4 or 6 shades where I'm like, don't love it. If I cover that bit up, I can still make the rest of the palette work for me. But I have also come to the conclusion by now that if I don't think I'm going to be using 80% of the palette, I don't think it's going to be worth it. So this one is borderline for me, but it definitely, like, based on what I had heard people saying online and looking at this online and seeing how warm toned a palette looks that is called cool neutrals, I was biased going into this, and it definitely surprised me a lot in a good way when I started using this. Is this for everyone? No, this is not going to be cool toned enough for people who really truly enjoy cool tones, I think, but it's definitely a great beginner, like a beginner friendly cool tone palette for people who do want cool tones, but who may be afraid that they're gonna look ashy on them, or that, you know, if you think that cool tones always make you look ghostly pale, then this is a great way of being able to blend things together and getting the most of it, especially if you have medium to deep skin, because I definitely think people with medium to deep skin can be the people that struggle using things that are this gray toned, because it's all going to look bland and the same on them. And here you have plenty of options to make it work. So I think if you're looking for a good cool tone palette and you fall into that kind of demographic, it's for you. It has your name written all over it. Something that I like still, but that I like the idea of more than the way it played out once I used it, is the Ensley Rain Cold Moon. This was one of the first things I tried from Ensley Rain. I also tried out the Lands of Enchantment, which is also cool tone, but it's a little bit colorful. So I didn't put it in this eyeshadow overview, you could say, but the Cold Moon is definitely cooler toned than the Lands of Enchantment, I feel. Like that one's just like bright, colorful pastels. So for me, this works better in terms of like a cool tone color story, but this had the same issue for me as the Unearthly palettes. Ensley Rain, not affordable at all. This is quite possibly one of the most expensive brands currently on the market. And it's not like, if you're charging close to Pat McGrath mothership prices, I also want the packaging. And while the artwork on this is gorgeous, I have heard it's AI generated, so this was not created by an artist. It's just cardboard packaging, and while that's very sleek and slim and easy to handle, if I'm paying close to 100 euros for an eyeshadow palette, I also want there to be the oomph packaging, which is, it just doesn't have it. Stunning, yes. Does it have a lot of eyeshadow though? That's one of the things that I think warrants the price point that Ensley Rain charges, is the fact that you always get like 20 plus shades. There's a lot of product in here, okay? And here, like with the Sigma, you get a lot of mattes and shimmers that perfectly line up. There is warmth, especially here in the top row, but the majority of this palette is a really, really stunning, cool tone, neutral color story. Here's the issue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sort of like flaky shimmers that did not work with brushes. If I pay this much money for makeup, I want to be able to have options in how I apply my makeup, which I don't get with this. Because these shimmers, these flaky shimmers, like when you pick them up with a brush, there's all these little flakes attached to your brush hairs. And when you apply it, they start to break apart, and that's how the eyeshadow is applied. With the heat of your fingers, or maybe if you use like one of those sponge tip applicators, these are going to be applied a lot better. But once you start blending on the eye, they just look like any regular shimmer, which we also get in this palette in the second half. So these shimmers I loved. Those were blendable, workable, easy to work with. And once I got these applied to the eyes, they didn't look any differently compared to these ones. once I got them there. But to get them there, I had to work way too hard for how expensive this is. Are they beautiful? Yes. The flakies have a really, really wonderful shift, which I appreciate. But if you have hooded eyes, if you have mature lids, if you have any issues easily with fallout or texture or anything like that, you're not gonna like this formula. Those flaky shimmers feel so heavy on the lid that once you get them there and they look smooth and blended and you get the wonderful shifts, it starts to crease super easily. And I double prime my lids. Like, I go in hardcore because I've got more deep set eyes. I have a little bit of a hood. So yes, things crease on me really easily. And the way I've taught myself to combat that is to go in with 2 primers. I use a clear eyeshadow primer that's going to give like a little bit of a like a layer that attaches anything I put on top, like it glues it to my lids. And then I go in with a second eyeshadow primer after that has set to cancel out any redness and veining, and I sort of like make sure there is a good base layer for my makeup to sit on. With these, I have to go in with a glitter primer to make them stick all day. And it's not glitter. So for how expensive this was, I was just a little bit too like disappointed with it. And I definitely know now that I've tried more Ensley Rain palettes that it's really just these flaky shimmers that I don't like. I've tried the Cosmic Dreamer palette and that looked stunning all day, but it doesn't have the flaky shimmers. The Lands of Enchantment, really beautiful, also some shifty shades in there, but that don't have the flaky formula that I like a lot better. So I do feel there are palettes that are worth the money in the Ensley Rain like lineup. This one, as beautiful as this looks, like I look at this and it just pulls on my heartstrings every single time. But there were just too many issues with especially the flaky shimmers this has that I didn't love. So for me, this wasn't quite worth the price point. Is it a beautiful palette? Yes. Am I glad to own this? Yes. Would I recommend this from a purchasing perspective? No. Then we have another palette that I did like, but I actually think that in terms of a cool tone color story, it doesn't quite work. So let me explain it to you. This is by Cosmic Brushes Cosmic Beauty. I hear some people saying that they've rebranded to Cosmic Beauty, but I bought this through their website and all of the information I got is just Cosmic Brushes. So let's just call them Cosmic Brushes for now. This is the Cool Trolls. This was released together with the Neutrals over the summertime. And this is another one of my favorite indie brands. They do 20 color story palettes that have also gone up in price compared to some of their earlier stuff. The Serenity palette was like £20. These are almost double the price. But it's still worth it to me. Like for how many shades you get, the kind of formulas you get, these now have multi-chromes in, and the formula is amazing. I love these from a formula standpoint, and you know, an Ensley Rain palette is easily double the price point of this. So that's why I still think it's worth it. This is a beautiful palette. Just don't expect it to be neutral. And since it's called Cool Trolls, which seems to be like a combination of cool and neutral to me anyways, it's just not a very neutral palette. It's very blue heavy in the bottom half. And the neutrals we do get aren't cool toned. They aren't as warm as they look in the palette. I think it suffers from a similar thing as some of the neutrals in the Fantasy Cosmetica palette does, because this is such a grayish blue background with this silver edging around all of the pans. I feel like these shades aren't done justice if you just look at them in the pan. On the eyes, they were absolutely stunning. Really, really beautiful. But it's just not a very neutral palette. It already starts in the second row where we get a pink and a purple, and then it just gets blue and purple from there on out. Is it a stunning palette? Yes. But if you're looking for a good cool tone neutral, this isn't going to be it. If you like blues and purples with some neutrals in, this is stunning. This is really, really beautiful. However, I think of this brand a better cool toned offering that they also do. Like if you really truly want to commit to blue, greens, and purples, try their Winter Wonderland palette. That came out last year. It's gonna be back for winter. That's so much better. So I just like that color story a little bit better than I do this. This does have some neutrals in, so if you do want those neutrals, they can work, but I just don't feel that they are as cool toned as they could have been. Compared to everything else that's going on here. So this was a little bit disappointing of the two because I bought both of them. I definitely like the neutrals a little bit better than I did this one. And I would definitely recommend from this brand to go for the Winter Wonderland rather than this one, because I feel they just do a similar thing and the Winter Wonderland just does it better. Is this a beautiful palette? Yes. Is it consistent with the formula that this brand does? Also, yes, it is stunning. If you like the look of this color story, you can definitely go for it, but it wasn't my favorite from the brand. The Blend Bunny palette of all Blend Bunny palettes, dare I say it? I think I can. So this was also launched over the summertime. It's the Blend Bunny Longing palette, and I like this a lot. I have said so many times how I do really appreciate Blend Bunny eyeshadow. I think it's really, really stunning. And where this brand shines is their mattes. The matte formula of Blend Bunny is one of the best matte formulas you're ever gonna find. I just prefer shimmers. That's where my preference lies. And we always only get one shimmer in every single row in a Blend Bunny palette. So for me, this just feels very limiting. However, from all of the Blend Bunny palettes I have now tried, this is definitely the most cool toned one they've done. There isn't anything that's super warm, like even on this side, like it looks like these are olives, but they definitely have like a gray sort of undertone to them. So as far as a cool tone palette goes from Blend Bunny, this is the most cool tone palette they have done so far. And I was very curious whether this would work out for them because I tried the Dollhouse, which was like their previous palette that they kind of released, being like a cool tone color story, which I just didn't find very cool toned once I started trying it. But this is beautiful. It has some interesting shimmers in. We get like shifty things down here. There are some beautiful, like really light, vibrant colors as well. We get some mid-tone shimmers in here. Overall, this is really good. So if this is up your street, you like the color story of this, you want neutrals that are cool toned with some pops of color, with interesting shimmers and an amazing matte formula, I can highly recommend this one. This is definitely now my favorite Blend Bunny palette I own. But compared to everything that I try in a year, I don't feel this is super special. Even though I really appreciate this palette, it's not like a super duper standout in my collection. Out of everything that I've tried, I think the three things that surprised me the most, top three of everything I have here for you are the Beauty Bay, the MUA, and the Sigma. And of course I did like my Fantasy Cosmetica and I liked most of these things, but these were the things that truly blew me out of the park, especially compared to the expectations I had going in. This, super affordable, under €5, doesn't break the bank. The Beauty Bay one, finally a Beauty Bay palette that does work for me, and again, it doesn't break the bank. And while this got a lot of flack, the Cool Trolls from Sigma, I really like it. I think it's one of the best things that Sigma has done as a brand. I can see this appealing to so many people. I wish it was really given a fair chance by a lot of the makeup community when it was launched, because this is a good one. This is really, really good. So thank you so very much for joining me here today. I hope this little roundup review was helpful for you in terms of knowing which cool tone things are out there. Most of these things, if not all of them, were released this year. So they are some of the more recent releases. I will be back with another video like this in the future once I have tried some more cool tone palettes for sure, because I like doing these every couple of months whenever I've tried enough cooler toned eyeshadow palette. So let me know in a comment down below what your favorite palette was, because I would love to know. And then for now, I would like to thank you so very much for hanging out with me and joining me again on the channel. Thumbs up the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more by me. I make several videos every single week, so if you'd like to stay tuned for more, and then I hope to see you in my next one. Bye-bye.